everyone, this is Grandmaster Ahmed and this is the 8th episode talking about the Reti opening, and in this lecture we are going to end what's so-called the Symmetrical English. Knight f3, c5, c4, knight f6, g3. Previously we talked about this position, which is knight c6, g3, g6, bishop g2, bishop g7, knight c3, e6. We said here we have e6, e5 and knight f6. In this lecture, we are gonna take e5 with knight g7 or knight f6 alone, but with another move order, which is fine, which is probably possible. And in Reti, you might have the same position, taking in mind other move order. So after knight f3, c5, we go c4, knight f6, we go g3 first, g6, then bishop g2, bishop g7. We castle knight c6 in this position. Okay, wait a second. No, I want to start with the other one. I wanted to start with this first, which is the e5 structure. So bear me a second. Knight f3, c5, c4, knight c6, for example. g6, bishop g2, bishop g7, we castle, and now e5. This is so-called the Botvinnik system, and it's kind of famous to play against the King's Indian attack as black, for example, after e4, d3 structure with the pawn being on c2. So it's good. So this is an interesting idea. Imagine that you have a game with your opponent and you don't know what is he doing against the Reti or against the English. So one trick to do is to see what is he doing against the King's Indian attack. The King's Indian attack go like, for example, e4, c5, if he is a c5 player, knight f3, and for example, knight c6, g3, g6, bishop g2, bishop g7, and say you castle. Now, most likely, if black likes to play e5, then against the Reti or the English will go with the same structure, e5, knight, ge7. If he played knight f6, most likely will play knight f6 against you. If e6, knight ge7, again you might, or you have a higher chance to face that structure. I hope you get the idea. So let's get back to our structure. Knight c6, g3, g6, bishop g2, bishop g7, we castle, and now e5. After e5 we go knight c3, but remember, not d3. Many of you will go automatic move d3. No, I go knight c3 first, and after knight ge7 in this position, a very concrete and very important move, which is this idea of a3. Why a3? I wanted simply to go b4 and as fast as I can. Now the main move is castling, d6 is there, but you might ask, what if a5? If a5, simply now the b5 square is a weak square, while I'm not giving the b4 square, so that's a kind of an advantage. And you always have this idea, which is what? Knight e1, knight c2, knight e3, knight d5, and you have to do it now. So started by knight e1, say d6, knight c2, castling, rook b1 first, and after bishop b6. Now there's a strategical threat for black, which is what? Which is d5. If he managed to go d5, then black is completely fine. That's why you have to play knight e3, and after knight e3 you have a very, very nice grab on the d4 on the d5 square, so white is much better. So let's get back a bit after a3. a5 is not the best move, and most likely if your opponent is a good strategical player, he won't play a5. So main move is castling. Let's check d6 first. If d6, now we go like not kamikaze stuff, but I mean we go active chess like before. And now if after b4 the pawn is accepted, like c takes b4, a takes b4, and then knight takes b4, then that's a problem. Why? Because I do have bishop a3, and after bishop a3 the knight is attacked. Make sure that, or note that you can't go a5, I can take, you take back, then you lose your rook. So after knight ec6, for example, now black to play and win, simply, or sorry, white to play and win. Ta-da! Queen a4. The idea is I'm attacking the knight, and the knight cannot be protected, and I am pinning the other knight as well. Again, a5 doesn't work. I simply take, and if you take with the knight, you can't because of the pin, and if you take with the pawn, you can't because of the rook. So you're losing either way. So if d6, I simply go b4, but wait a second, how about e4 now? Seems interesting, which is attacking the knight now and opening the diagonal for the bishop. I simply go knight e1, attacking the e4 pawn. And now, in order to protect that, we'll go f5. Now, very interesting move is bishop b2. Oh, wait a second, bishop b2. But now, am I not losing the pawn now after c takes b4, a takes b4, knight takes b4? The answer is not. Why? Because tactics is there. Queen b3. And after queen b3, the knight is attacked. protected whatever way you would like to. For example, knight bc6, and now white to play. Very nice idea. Knight takes a4. The bishop now is under fire, and by that you cannot take my knight. And if you take my bishop, then queen takes b2, and the rook is under fire, so you cannot take my knight. And I'm strategically winning. I have a better pawn structure and a better king safety, so I am in a much better situation. And knight g5 actually is coming, knight f6 actually is coming, so you don't know what to do with your king. So you can't go actually after castling. Okay, you can, but b4 is very strong. So about castling in this position, if you go castling, then I will go the idea out of a3, which is simply b4. And after b4, always you have bc, always you have b5, always you have annoying stuff. So two moves, either d6 to support the pawn, or c takes b4. You need, or listen, this is a very interesting advice. Whenever you're studying a line, trying to know what to do if you are a pawn down. So here you have to know what to do. But for example, after d6, you don't have to know what to do because you're giving nothing. So you don't have to have exact way to play because you're not a pawn down. So you are not forced to show us a compensation. Okay, we will go back to c takes b4 later. But if you go d6, I simply go rook b1. This is a very strategical, not a very strategical, but it's a nice prophylactic move away of the bishop's diagonal. And in the meantime, I am pressuring the b7 pawn, bc5. Whenever I can play it, I will play it. So after rook b1, say for example f5, trying to do some sort of attacks. And now the typical idea, which is what? Knight e1, knight c2, knight e3, knight d5. Say for example rook b8. Why rook b8? Black wants to go bishop to e6. Why bishop e6? Attacking the pawn and improving the pieces. But mind you, and remind you, the pawn is not protected. bc5 is there. That's why rook b8. But now knight c2, bishop b6, knight e3. And again, I have a very nice, well-timed grip on the d5 square. So white is much better. So after b4, d6 is a normal move. C takes b4 is probably what you're gonna face. A takes b4 back, and now knight takes b4. After knight takes b4, bishop a3, again a5 cannot be working, so knight ec6. After knight ec6, this knight is under the pin, so you go attack the knight one more time. Knight d5, and it's a very risky position for black. Why? a5 cannot be played. You cannot protect the knight more. Queen a5, c doesn't work because bishop takes. Queen b6 doesn't work. So in this position, black has to give up the exchange after knight takes d5. But after knight takes d5, bishop takes f8, c, queen takes f8, for example, or say queen f8, for example. Then c takes d5, and this position is clearly better for white. Simply why? Because okay, you might say, oh wait a second, these are two connected pass pawns, but you cannot move them that easily because I have the open file, the other open file, so I will pressure them as much as possible. And actually your pieces are not coordinated that well, and you can play some training games on this position in order to understand it even much better. The knight will go to the queen side, either d2, c4, e4, b3, depends on where black will put his pawn structure. So this is a very decent way in order to know how to play against the structure. And I'm sure a third of your opponents will go with this structure, which is e5, the reverse Botvinnik setup. Now let's go to the symmetrical English. As we said, knight f6 idea. And so e6 we have seen with knight g7, e5 with knight g7 already seen. And now we will go with the knight f6 approach. After knight c6, either with knight c3 or without. But it's recommended to go without. Like go knight, for example, go d4 right away. Why? Because e5 might be there. But again, many move orders will go to the, or will lead to the same position. After d4, c d4, knight d4, now black has two ideas, either to take or to sacrifice. What do I mean by that? Say castling, knight c3. Now black has to take, otherwise he will play this gambit, d6, which is probably gonna happen that, or to some extent in blitz game especially. The idea is after taking, bishop takes c6 to play rook b8. And after rook b8, there's a pressure here. You kind of have a, like, you speed your development somehow. And after bishop g2, which is a very recommended move, your bishop here is kind of exposed. And now after bishop g2, black has a very nice idea, which is queen a5. The queen a5 idea is to, or one of the ideas is to stop this b3, so the knight is under fire. I can't go bishop d2, the b2 pawn will be taken. A bit not very convinced with rook b1, maybe bishop f5 ideas. So what should I do now in this position? A very interesting move actually is queen e1. And now after queen e1, I would like simply to go knight d5. I'm supporting the knight, and knight d5 will make use of the queen being here. And now, for example, say bishop e6. In order to attack the pawn, I cannot go b3, which is probably one of the main ideas of queen a5. I can simply go knight d5. Seems that I'm losing a pawn because there's 1, 2, 3, but now the queen is under fire. And guess what? The e7 pawn as well. So maybe you can take here. Maybe you can take here. Okay, I'm sure that rook e1 is good idea, but maybe knight e7 first. And after king h8 now, rook takes e1. Okay, you need to calculate a bit of bishop takes c4, but I feel like I can go back knight c6, knight d4, so my knight can go back. I am a pawn up with no compensation, better even pawn structure, so everything is fine and I'm fine. But after queen e1, knight d5, black has to go back like queen d8, and after queen d8, just rook b1, and this position is clearly better for white as white is a pawn up. So the idea of sacrificing the pawn with d6 is nonsense. So that's why after knight d4 has to be played. Queen takes d4 sooner or later, and now d6. I go knight c3, castling to be played, and now very interesting move, which is this move, queen to d3. Let's go back a second, and now why queen d3 is very interesting. I mean, the first time I saw this move, I felt like, but isn't the queen is very exposed here? Yes, but the queen is serving a very important strategical idea. One of the key ideas, and probably the more frequent one and the most practical one, is to go a6, b5 and attack on the queen side. So the queen being on d3, that means ideas like b5 is not easy or easily accomplished. So after queen d3 now in this position, a6 for example, in order to go rook b8 followed by b5, note that you cannot improve the bishop, there's always bishop takes b7. I now go bishop g5, and after bishop g5 you go rook b8 for example, trying to have this idea of b5, but then simply rook c1. And again, if you go b5 now in this position, hoping for some kind of pinning or stuff like this, that, and then bishop a6, the knight is under fire, maybe queen a5 to be coming, and to be honest, this position is very great. I mean, it seems very great for black. That's why here after b5, I have a very interesting idea, which is this c5. And the main idea is the rook cannot be moving to many squares, and after you take, for example, I take, you take, and I simply attack the rook bishop f4. And the rook cannot go to light squares, and if rook b6 simply bishop to c7, and I am going to be up an exchange in a position which is very, very symmetrical, and there's no compensation, no imbalances now. That's why you cannot go b5. Look, I mean, in a blitz or maybe even in a rapid game, it's not easy to notice that b5 there is c5. Okay, after c5 as black you will understand what's going on, but before that you might not understand what's going on, because you need to go b5 as soon as it's possible, and now it's possible because c takes b5 is not that much good. So after rook c1, say bishop e6 for example, trying to improve the bishop, trying to complete the development somehow. So after bishop e6 we go b3, and now queen a5. Why queen a5? Supporting this b5 idea and also attacking the bishop, but again queen d2 now. Why queen d2? I am supporting the bishop, and note that knight d5 might be dangerous. For example, say b5. Now after b5, if knight d5, I mean either now or take first and then knight d5. Now I'm attacking the queen, and if you take my queen again, I take check first and then take back, and I am going to be a pawn up. So after b5, cb5, knight cb5, ab5, knight d5, you have probably to go back, but if you went back, then simply I will leave you with a very bad pawn structure. d6 pawn is very weak, rook c6, the other rook to be coming either here or there, and white is much, much, much better. So after queen d2, rook fc8 is played. Why rook fc8? Because now if you go knight d5, then I can take, and if you take on e7, king f8 is there, very important move. And after king f8, you have to take the queen back, and now you will be, or we will be, piece down. That's why after rook fc8, we will play a very interesting, decent move to stop this idea of b5, which is bishop e3. Why bishop e3? Because now if you go b5, which is, okay, if you don't go b5, I can go rook fd1, I can go a3, I can go b4. In the proper time, I can go knight d5, maybe bishop d4. I have many good waiting moves. But black doesn't have that much of good waiting move or moves. So after bishop e3, sooner or later we'll go for b5. And again, b5 is a very bad move. The idea or the reason for that is bishop a7. And after bishop a7, the rook has no squares to go to, and you will be up in exchange with a clearly better position. And by this, we still have something to talk about the Reti, but we're almost done. We're almost done. And I hope you like what you're watching. And please don't forget to subscribe if you keep watching to this length. And don't forget to watch the previous episode. We talked about the King's Indian. We talked about the d5 after knight f3, d5, c4 Reti. So many stuff you can watch. You can find it on your left. And if you like what you have seen, don't forget to share and subscribe. And see you in the next one. Have a nice one.